of the common types of accidents that are faced by construction workers in New York City involves a tripping or falling on the job site. And a case of ours from a few years ago illustrates how this statute and how the law comes into play. We represented a construction worker who was carrying a rebar on his shoulder at a construction site. They were building a high-rise in New York City on 34th Street and 3rd Avenue at the intersection. It was a major project. And one of the floors was being built, and it's known as a deck. And basically there's the bottom of the floor, then there's rebar put down, then electrical conduit is tied to the rebar, and then another piece of rebar is placed on top of the electrical conduit so that the electrical conduit is sandwiched in between the rebar. Then there's something known as the top steel, which is the top of the floor. And our client was walking on the rebar known as the top steel, and he had to walk on his tiptoes because he was one of the laborers. He was in local 18A, which is the concrete workers, one of the local laborers. And he was walking on his tiptoes, but while he was walking, he was carrying 150 pounds of rebar. He was carrying rebar rods, known as number 8 rods, and they're about 12 feet in length, on his shoulder and walking on his tiptoes. And unbeknownst to him, one of those electrical conduit pieces was not tied down to the rebar as it should be. And when we deposed the defendant from the electrical company, he admitted that one electrician is supposed to place the electrical conduit and another electrician is supposed to tie it down. But sometimes there's a lag time between when the first one puts the electrical conduit down to when the second electrician ties it. And sometimes, as in this case, they don't tie it at all because some of the pieces of the electrical conduit are waste, or pieces that are supposed to be thrown out, but they're left on the construction floor, which is a violation of the housekeeping and safety that should be going on at the construction site. So in this particular example, going to what caused our client to fall, it was the electrical conduit. And the electrical conduit is round. It could be 10 feet in length. Each piece is about 10 feet. And it's circular. And it has a diameter anywhere from 1/2 inch up to 1.5 inches, 2 inches. And this particular piece wasn't tied down. I think it was a piece that was one of the waste pieces that was supposed to be thrown out, but it was left there. And as he stepped on it, thinking it was tied down as he walked on his tiptoes with 150 pounds of construction equipment on his shoulder, his foot slipped on the circular rebar that wasn't tied down, and he fell, and he suffered a very severe knee injury. And when we brought that lawsuit in the Supreme Court of the State of New York, County of New York, which is Manhattan, when we brought that lawsuit, we alleged that it was a violation of the labor law, section 241.6, which relies on the industrial code found in Title 23. And one of those codes, it has to be a specific statutory violation that was made by an owner, a general contractor, or an agent of the owner or general contractor on that particular job site. And one of the Title 23 codes that we relied on was 1.7e. And 1.7e is basically a housekeeping code. It says that the passageway where a construction worker does their work, or the work area where a construction worker does their work, has to be free and clear of debris, of accumulation of dirt or debris, or any obstructions or conditions that could be considered tripping hazards. And this was obviously a violation because they had pieces of electrical conduit that were not tied down, that were just scraps lying around, that if your foot gets on it, it's circular or roll, and you'll fall down and hurt yourself. And he did. He had a serious knee injury that required surgery. And in the course of the litigation, we were able to settle that case for $400,000, which we felt was a fair and reasonable amount for this particular construction worker. And he was very happy and satisfied with the work we had done. So this just illustrates one of the types of construction accidents that happen to people on the job site. And it is a trip and fall in a work area or a passageway on a job site.